My second year, I made about 10 grand. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some pretty decent change.
In people that come from little to nothing, that allow them to kind of elevate and have this hunger.
80 to 90% of your success in anything is just that, your mindset and psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the mechanical information. My coaching students, my warriors, own about 250,000 units that we know of under my tutelage in 7 years.
If you can reach financial freedom, you probably won't ever stop working because of the skill set that it's taken for you to get there, right?
So she wrote a book about it, 5 Regrets of Dying. You know what the number one regret was? Not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life. But the catchphrase with lenders right now is extend and pretend. But I'm going to tell you the proverbial stuff's about to hit the fan.
Rod, officially welcome to the Wealth Juice podcast. Corey and I are so excited to have you on the show, man. I know we mentioned it a little bit pre-recording, but we've been following your journey for a long time. We've looked up to you for years. And so it's a full circle moment. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, what a kind thing to say. I'm very excited to see if we can add some value.
I'm sure you can. So I guess let's just start all the way back. Just share your story with us. I know you have a lot of gems along the way, and I'm just curious, you kind of how you got to your level of success and hoops, hollers, all the 9 to 5 through it.
Oh, sure. Well, it's a sordid story of ups and downs, torrid story. So I'm a Dutch immigrant. I was born in the Netherlands. In fact, that's funny. Since I'm in my studio, I'll show you something funny here. But think wooden shoes. And windmills. These are the actual wooden shoes that I wore. True story. Got thrown into school. Found out what bullies were for the first time. I immigrated to when I was 6 years old. Found out what bullies were, and then my mom sent me to school in these damn things. So I got my ass kicked again. We didn't have much growing up. I remember eating expired food and drinking powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk, and wearing clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school till I lied about my age when I was 14 because I was tall and got a job flipping burgers at Burger King so I could, buy my own freaking clothes finally. And I know you may have listeners that had it harder than I did. Luckily I knew I wanted more, and my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she used to babysit kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And with her babysitting money, she was a bit of an entrepreneur. No formal education, but she invested in the stock market successfully and also invested in real estate. Now, her first real estate acquisition was a house right across the street from us. She bought when I was about 14 for about 30 grand. And then when I was 17, she told me it had gone up in value 20 grand. She'd made $20,000 in her sleep. And I'm like, what? You made, this is when 20 grand was a lot of money. Okay. This is 1977. And I'm like, you made 20 grand, you didn't do anything? Screw college, I'm getting into real estate. So I went out and got my real estate license, and I was going to be rich in real estate. Well, my first year I made about 8 grand. My second year I made about 10 grand. But my third year I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some pretty decent change. And so what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I met a guy. I was actually dating his daughter, and he was a realtor that I worked for actually. And he taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology. And 80 to 90% of your success in anything is just that, your mindset and psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the mechanical information, we talk about on our podcasts. And, fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term in 3 states. In 2000, and I own thousands of apartment units now. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I got a head so freaking big, I could barely fit it through a door. I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God or the universe will give you a nice little smackdown or reckoning. Well, that was 2008. I lost $50 million in 2008 conservatively. And so, what I'm known for talking about and teaching is really the mindset it took to have 50 million to lose in the first place. And maybe more importantly, the mindset it took to recover from losing 50 million. So I'm happy to go into some of those strategies with you guys if you like, because they're very powerful.
I'd love for you to do that. Before we do, I just have a question for you. And I think you're probably someone that's really great at articulating this, just being where you came from. So Ryan and I've shared this a couple of times on the podcast. Ryan and I had modest growing up, probably middle class, maybe even upper middle class, depending upon like where you stand on that. I've talked to so many people who are from a similar position that you're from, and I'm curious if you think that there's something ingrained in people that come from little to nothing that allow them to kind of elevate and have this hunger that maybe Ryan and I couldn't even tap into? I'm not suggesting that we're not successful, but $50 million is pretty far away. So the reason why I asked this is just, when you mentioned like coming from nothing, I've talked to a lot of people who have built this up. I'm just curious if you have a stance on it.
Well, I think there's something to be said for being an immigrant. Number one, I think that's a component that you see a lot where people that were immigrants become successful. I don't know that's certainly not the only factor. The fact that I, had very little growing up, and yeah, there are lots of examples of that, but there are also lots of examples of people that came from where you're at that went out and kicked ass. But I'm going to tell you, hunger is hunger, and you just got to want more. Now, if someone in your position was so comfortable that they didn't get the leverage on themselves to want more, because, comfort zone's a nice warm place and nothing freaking grows there, right? So, and the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of discomfort you can live with. That's a Tony Robbins quote. And, that magnificent life of your dreams is just on the other side of that freaking comfort. So again, if you come from a comfortable place and that causes you to not have that hunger, in fact, that's the first thing I want to talk about is burning desire or hunger. Napoleon Hill in his book calls it a burning desire. You've got to have that. So like if you come to one of my boot camps, and I'll give your peeps a hell of a deal if they want to come, but if you come to one of my boot camps, the first thing we do is goal setting on steroids, because how do you get anything if you don't know what the hell you want? You got to know what you want and why you want it, right? And so, that's the first thing that we do, and that's the first thing I tell people to do. It's something they should do several times a year. You got to want it bad. So you've got to have written goals. You got to know why those goals are a why, because that's how you push through fear. That's how you push through limiting beliefs. Getting my butt kicked when I was young and other things that happened to me when I was young. I had this girl I had a crush on when I was like 9 years old. And, I hadn't even talked to her, but I thought I was in love. And I made the mistake of telling my friend Becky that I liked her. Her name was Carolyn. And so I'm on the playground hopping around because I'm in love. And I see Carolyn coming towards me. Well, it felt like half the school. It's probably about 10 kids. No kidding. And she comes up to me and she says, "Do you like mustard?" And I just said yes to anything. I said, "Yeah, I like mustard." First time I ever looked her in the face or talked to her, she said, "Well, I hate mustard and I hate you." And all the kids laughed, right? It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was crushing for me, along with getting my ass kicked. And so, I came up with this limiting belief that I wasn't good enough. I used to ask myself, how can I show them I'm good enough? Now that created hunger, I will tell you, for sure. But you got to have that hunger. And a lot of people have limiting beliefs like that. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, I don't have enough time or money. Another one of mine was I'm not analytical enough. But, there's a reason that the acronym for belief systems is BS, because 99% of them are BS. But you've got to have that hunger to push through them and push through fear or to get uncomfortable, right? And that burning desire is what'll get your butt back up when you get knocked down. And are you going to get knocked down? Yeah, every single time. If you're not getting your butt kicked occasionally, you're not trying, right? And that even average ability, and I see this in my students, my coaching students, my warriors own about 250,000 units that we know of under my tutelage in 7 years. I'm very proud of that. And I see it with them. Even average ability or even average IQ with that burning desire and that hunger, success is inevitable, so
let's talk about that fortitude then, Rod, because there's one thing to build up $50 million worth enough to lose, right? I mean, that's unbelievable. But then losing it, I'm curious about the mindset that you had to tap back into another shift to build it back up. Now you do have the tools, you have all these things. We always ask the question, if everything was taken away, could you build it back up? You're literally living proof that you did. But I'm very curious about what went through your mind and maybe what you had to tap into.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm going to tell you the same steps that I took to get there are the same steps I took to get back there. And it started with goals. I reassociated with my goals again. What do I really want? Because I hid under a rock for a couple of months, my eyeball poking out because I thought I was set for life, with 50 million, in equity and 800 houses and multiple apartment complexes, and the whole thing just blew up. And by the way, I was only at a 30% loan to value. People are like, you over leveraged. That's why you lost. No, I was at 30 cents on the dollar is what I owed, and I still crashed and burned. And we can dig deep on that if you want. So the first thing was goals. Then the second thing is you got to make a decision. You got to, and a decision doesn't mean you're interested. A decision means, and it's not one toe in, 1 foot, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's freaking done. When you decide, it's done, and then once you've decided, you're committed. And if you're not committed and just interested, you're going to get knocked off track. But when you're committed, you're literally like a train on a track. Motivation will get you started, but like the goal setting will get you started, but that commitment's going to bring you home. But you got to make a decision. And the Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. So like if you're going to attack the island in battle, you burn your ships because you're taking their damn ships home. That's a decision. Okay. There's no retreat. There's nothing. It's done. Okay. That's basically a decision. So that's the next piece. I made a decision when I lost everything. All right, get up off your pity party. Go, you've got the tools to go kick butt again. And I did, but it's the same thing when you're just getting started. So if you haven't started yet, if you're in a W-2 job and you want more, the quote unquote rat race, you got to do the goals first. Do the goals. And by the way, if you don't want to come to one of my boot camps, I have a goal setting session on my link tree. It's rodslinks.com. It's down at the bottom. Here's the thing. People spend more time planning a freaking birthday party than they do designing their lives. Okay. Doing your goals is designing your freaking life. So rodslinks.com at the bottom, there's a guide you can download. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. Go do the goals. About an hour. If your spouse hasn't done them, do them with your spouse. If you got a kid over 10 years old, have them do it. Have them design their life. Okay. So again, goals, then the decision, and then you've just got to take that first step, and Dr. Martin Luther King said, you take that first step in faith, the next step will be revealed. You don't have to see the whole freaking staircase, right? Lao Tzu said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but you got to take that step. And sometimes that step could be the most, the biggest step of your life. And that little decision could be the biggest decision in your life. But here's the thing to remember. You can drive all the way across the United States at night with your headlights only seeing 50 feet in front of you. And you can make it because other people have done it before. You may have some setbacks, you may have some hurdles, but it can be done. It's the same way with any of your goals. And so you don't have to see the whole staircase. You don't have to see the whole journey, but you've got to take that first step. Don't wait. I see it honestly on the first step with the law of the first deal with my students. It might be 4 months, 6 months, sometimes even as long as 8 months, and they haven't gotten a deal yet. And I'm kicking them in the butt. Keep going. Come on, keep networking. Go make it happen. And then they get one. Next thing you know, they have 3. I'm like, what the heck just happened? And it's because it's all between their ears, right? It's that law of the first deal. But the thing you want to remember, this life is not a dress rehearsal. Okay. This is it. Okay. And, I'm going to tell you and a lot of people fear failure, and I did as well for a while, but don't fear failure. We fail our way to success. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Fear regret. Okay. There was a nurse in Australia, a hospice nurse that used to take care of patients when they were about to die. Her name was Bronnie, Bronny Ware. I think Bronnie Ware. She wrote a book. It's called The 5 Regrets of Dying. She asked her patients, do you have any regrets? And she wrote a book about it, The 5 Regrets of Dying. You know what the number one regret was? Not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life, not doing what I know I'm capable of. So if you're listening, fear that. Don't fear freaking failure, okay? Because I can't think of anything worse than that. But, and then we talked about fear and limiting beliefs. I told you about, why I came up with that question. I wasn't good enough. How can I show them I'm good enough? Which candidly caused me to be a success because I had to prove it, but it also cost me my first family because I was just totally focused on success at the expense of my family. And so one of the things I teach my coaching students, my warriors, I teach them how to time block and pay attention to what's most important in their lives. And by the way, if you do my goal setting session, at the end of that is my weekly planning process. It's about 10, 15 minutes. And that's the reason I taught that, to teach people, hey, make sure you got your friggin' priorities straight. And money's important, but not as important as time with your kids and time with your spouse. And so,
without a doubt. I think Ryan and I resonate a lot with that. Like the how much is enough, and where do you draw the line, and doing the things that you really want to do. One of the things that I want to tap into.
Well, hold on. I want to stop you on something you just said. How much is enough? Wrong question. Because you can keep freaking going. You just got to make sure that the people in your life that freaking matter have your presence. A lot of people will come home and they'll be like me. I was with my kids every night. I played with them, but I wasn't there mentally. Okay. So people that love you want your presence and your focus, which is one of the things I talk about in that weekly planning process. I wouldn't ask the question, how much is enough? Because you can leverage your time. You can hire people to help you. There's lots of things you can do as long as you pay, you give the people that need it the attention. Sorry to interrupt, but
no,
anyway,
I think it's great. I think it's great because you're right. If once you build that muscle memory to keep building, it's kind of hard to shut that off. And you don't typically do that. Just like the old saying, like, oh, if you can reach financial freedom, you probably won't ever stop working because of the skill set that it's taken for you to get there, right? Like
and you love it, and you freaking love it typically, right? Yeah.
The question that I have for you, Rod, is so I've done some research on you. Like I know you're really involved with a lot of these big dogs here. You've had somebody like Grant Cardone on your podcast, and you've talked to him, and his thing is, hey, go buy a 32 unit apartment complex. That's your first deal. I'm not suggesting that's right or wrong.
Let me tell you something funny about that. Okay. Let tell you something funny. Yeah. I love Grant. I crack up every time I talk to him. He's a freaking riot, but I had him on the show the second time, and we took a question from a vet. Okay. And it ties right into what you just said. Okay. We took a question from a vet, and the vet said, hey, should I use my VA to buy a fourplex? Vets can buy a fourplex, no money down. They have VA loans. It's freaking extraordinary, right? Nothing out of their pocket. And Grant's like, no, buy a 16 unit. I'm like, dude, it's no money down. And you can see on the look on his face, not used to be being told no. I pissed him off, but he's fine. We're friends. But that's, listen, here's the key. Okay. Get freaking started. I don't care if it's a house. Okay. Just get freaking started, because we have a courage muscle, right? I interview people on my couch here in my studio with 5,000 units, 10,000 units. And I always ask the question, because they all started with houses or duplexes. I maybe have met 3 people in my life that started with 100 units. Very unusual. And because it's a team sport, you're going to do it together. But I always ask the question, what would you do if you went back and told 18-year-old self something? Because I know the answer. It's always going to go bigger, faster. And I don't want them to hear it from me. I want them to hear it from them. But yeah, no, listen, I love Grant, but come on now. Grant also says he won't own a house, and now he owns houses on both coasts. Okay. So come on, dude.
That's why I asked the question. Cause I think you're known as the multifamily guy. So I'm very curious about like the way that if you were not necessarily starting over, because when you started, it's a very different time than now. But if you were buying today, would you still tell somebody that's super ambitious that wants to get going, hey, learn the ropes with a small multifamily before you try to go down, take a 12, 15, 18 unit? What do you think there?
Yeah, good question. Listen, it's that courage muscle. I mean, if you have the, the cojones to go out there and go with a larger one, go for it. Put a team together. That's why my coaching students are so successful, because there's dozens of people in there that have purchased properties. So they align, because this is a team sport. There's lots of hats you can wear. You can be the person that finds the deals. You can be the person that raises the money with investors. You can be the person that underwrites the deal if you're analytical. You could be the person if you've got project management experience or construction experience, or frankly, management experience of any kind. You can asset manage the property. But I'll tell you that the larger deals are a team sport. You're not going to do it by yourself. I bought 2,000 houses pretty much by myself, but I would never take down even a 50 unit by myself. So, just remember that you don't have to wear all the hats. And I'm going to talk about that a little more in a minute if you allow me to keep going on the success stuff. But
yeah.
Anyway, if I answered your question,
you did. And yeah,
okay,
I'm happy to go into that. I'll give you just some context so Ryan and we own about 80 units, and I really, it's nowhere near where you're at, but I bring it up because I'm like, the thing that got us from 0 to 8 was so different than what got us from 8 to 80. And I tell this because we teach people how to buy their first or next rental property. And what I say is the branding, the personal branding and the networking is what got us from 8 to 80. Ryan and I brute forcing, saving up money and just like buying a duplex here and there is what got us from 0 to 8. So I'm curious about you. Talk about what you just said you were going to go into, because I think it's beneficial to learn, how does one person buy 2,000 homes? It sounds like, if I'm listening, I'm like, what even move could I possibly
one at a time make? Too. One at a time, by the way. It wasn't like groups of houses. It was one at a time. But let me finish the conversation. Well, let me answer that question, okay? Every business is nothing but people and systems. Every business, okay? You get the people right, you get the systems right, you kick ass. I was great with systems. And so I was able to systemize buying these houses. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes. I remember I had somebody looking at these houses for me, and he thought I looked at it, and I thought he looked at it, and I paid 30 grand for this house in Fort Myers. I get there, and there's nothing from the roof line up. Everything's gone. I still made money on it, but I'm like, holy crap. But so you make some mistakes, but that's okay. But anyway, that's how systems and every business is systems and I keep talking about my students. I'm not trying to push that, but we give them a CRM to use. We give them, analysis software, and there's lots of CRMs out there, guys. And CRM is client relationship management software. And if you're going to get into this business, you got to take off your employee hat and put on your entrepreneur hat, and you got to systemize. You've got to do all that. And so you're going to use the CRM to keep track of the people you talk to and the brokers and the lenders and the homeowner or owners and all that stuff. But and HubSpot's a great one. We use that, but we've got a really good one for our students. But anyway, so it's systems.
Yeah.
So the next thing, if you'll humor me, to talk about is focus. Okay. Focus is freaking power. I have a podcast. I'm blessed to say it's the largest really real estate podcast in the world for commercial real estate. And we're at about 25, 26 million downloads, I think, which doesn't sound like a lot in today's social media world, but for that niche, it's really good. And I get excited about that. But I bring that up because I listen to two podcasts. I listen to Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss. I try to get both sides of the aisle. I'm definitely on one side, but I try to get, try to stay balanced as much as I can. Well, on the other side is Tim Ferriss, and I love him, and he's a brilliant guy. And he interviews the best of the best in the world, and the best athletes: Michael Phelps, NFL, NBA players, actors like Jamie Foxx, Ed Norton, Hugh Jackman, Arnold. Billionaires like Ray Dalio, CEOs of the biggest companies in the world like Zuckerberg, and Rogan's interviewing them now too. But he deconstructs their success. Now, the reason I bring this up is incredible focus equals incredible success. But what you focus on also gets larger, okay? And I'll talk about that in a second. But I started to hear a pattern on these world-class people that he interviews. They almost all meditate. What does meditation enhance? Focus, right? And so I thought that's what we call a clue. But anyway, what you focus on gets larger. Like I'll get people to call me and say, hey, how do I get out of student loan debt? And I tell them, wrong freaking question. How do you make so much money that debt's irrelevant is the question you want to be asking. They asked Mother Teresa if she was anti-war. She said, no, I'm pro-peace. I mean, you get the analogy there, right? And so, your focus is super, super important. And right now with social media, and I don't know about you, but I'll be sitting there watching Netflix and scrolling on my freaking social media, which kills your focus, okay? And so pay attention to that, guys. Focus is power. Minimize distractions. Time block, use the Pareto principle. I teach that in my weekly planning process. So the next thing, unless you want to pipe in, I want to ask a question, is play to your strengths. Okay. Especially in my space, in the multifamily space, or really commercial real estate in general. My students now own, hotels and mixed use and mobile home parks and senior housing. That's another one I'm getting into. Love senior housing, self-storage, you name it. But the key is to play to your strengths. Why? Your strengths are your greatest freaking assets, okay? Don't try to build your weaknesses. Hire, align, or partner for your weaknesses. Because here's why. When you play into your strengths, you're going to love what it is you're doing, right? Because you're good at it, you love it, and work is play. You never work another day in your life. And when you play to your strengths, the blips in the road seem much less. The hurdles are much less. And so if you don't know what your strengths are, ask your friends. They'll tell you what your weaknesses are first, but then, ask them what you're good at and they'll tell you, or you could do a Myers-Briggs or a DISC profile. But here's the thing. Don't live someone else's life doing something you don't enjoy. Do what you enjoy. Figure out what it is you love. Do that. Why? Because again, you never work another day in your life, but you're also going to be passionate about it. And passion is required to influence people. Okay. When you love, you can see, you can feel my passion. Hopefully I love this. I'm enjoying the hell out of this because I'm doing all the talking probably, but I do love this. But when you're operating from your passion, you're able to influence people And this, any business requires you to influence, investors, and in my business, sellers and brokers, and people that you want to invest with you, and so on and so forth. And of course that passion equates to that, and passion's the fuel. So don't settle, don't play small, figure out what juices you, inspires you, and go do that. Passion breeds creativity and innovation, and minimizes or even eliminates fear.
100%. So first of all, I love it. I can tell the passion you have about all of this stuff.
Thanks.
And Corey and I do too. And that's why it's so aligned. And like, this is how we see our future moving. And you kind of just tie everything all together. Once everything's synergized, there's just a way the tidal wave keeps moving. It goes all together. But I want to touch on one thing that Corey also mentioned, but you've built a personal brand in the space. And we talk about that's how we scaled from 8 to 80. Can you talk about how important building a personal brand is to establish credibility, especially for early entrepreneurs and investors?
Sure. I actually have a course on that, but it's stupid money. I give it free to my students, but it's so freaking important. And here's why. I mean, you don't need a Facebook group with 55,000 people in it like I have, or a podcast it's as successful as this. But if you're going to go out there and try to raise money, creating a brand is critical. And my God, you live in the greatest freaking time on earth to do that. Okay. I mean, social media wasn't around with a lot of the people that sit on my couch. They had to go do a real estate investor association meeting or a meetup group to raise money. And they raised a lot of money that way, doing the same thing. I'm going to tell you, if you're going to do it though, if you're going to create a brand, hang your shingle, as it were, I'll give you some tips. Number one is, pick a name that ties into what it is you want to do. Okay. Obviously. Like in my business, a lot of the names end up in capital or investments or real estate so like my company that we do acquisitions is CRE Equity Capital. It's Commercial Real Estate Equity Capital. So pick a name. Find a domain name that ties into that name, okay? Go to uspto.gov and make sure that it isn't trademarked, okay? Ask me how I know. I've got students that got shut down because they were just once, because it was before I started telling people that. And then find a domain name that ties in. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like ours is CRE Capital, CREE Capital.com. And so that's how you set all that up. Go on Fiverr and have somebody set up your freaking website and get some business cards, and you're off to the races. They used to say hang your shingle because you'd hang a shingle and paint your name on it back in the day. But here's the thing. Then you want to create reach. How do you create reach? You add value. You add value and you're consistent. Now, with ChatGPT, it's extraordinary. You can add value. And at some point, I don't know how that's all going to get mitigated, but I'm actually having a bunch of my discussions and podcasts and so on and so forth, materials put into a special sidebar ChatGPT like hub so that ChatGPT can speak in my voice. Okay. Because, if you're going to use that, I would suggest you put your own spin on it. But just remember this, if you put crap out, you're crap. Okay. So you got to add value and you got to be consistent. I will tell you, there are times that I was sick as a dog. I still put my podcast episode out. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question on that.
Yeah, without a doubt. One of the things that I'm curious about, Rod, is what you're focused on now, right? You've had this trajectory that most people looks like it's meteoric. Like, you grow to 2,000 units and then, well, I'm not saying it doesn't come without ups and downs, but at the position you're at now, I'm curious on what you see as maybe an outlook on the multifamily market. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is being somebody that's been in the game so long, I'm hearing so many different people's opinions about what multifamily looks like in 2025.
Well, let me tell you the truth. It's in deep doo-doo, okay? It's in deep shit right now. Multifamily, there's a meltdown happening. I just got a deal today that I was in San Antonio looking at it was being sold for the debt. The lender just said they're going to cut the debt to try to sell it. There's a ton of those deals out there right now. A lot of operators got adjustable rate debt. I'm even in a couple my ex-partner got me into that I'm dealing with. But, and when your interest rate goes from 3 to 9 or 10, that's a bad day. Okay. And there's a ton of that. And so what's happening right now are lenders, are allowing deferrals. They're allowing loan modifications if there's a credit-worthy borrower in their opinion. But the catchphrase with lenders right now is extend and pretend. But I'm going to tell you, the proverbial stuff's about to hit the fan. It's already hitting the fan. There was a ton of properties in Texas that I was looking at and heard about that are being sold for the debt. but what's coming is that debt's even going to be discounted. So there's incredible freaking opportunity coming. And so if there was ever a time to get into that space, it's right now. I mean, do you guys mind if I mention my boot camp for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
It may or may not make it then, but I do one every couple of months. I've got one April 26th and 27th, and I don't sell anything there. It's 2 days of training, and I don't sell anything. And if your peeps want to come, tell them to use the code JUICE, and they come for $47 for 2 days of training with nothing being sold. Tell me your freaking excuse, okay? And it comes with some incredible bonuses. So for $47, come spend 2 days with me. You'll leave so juiced. You'll leave so freaking juiced, you'll be coming out of your skin, because I spend a lot of time on mindset, because that's 80% of this or 90% of this. But yeah, you'll leave knowing how to find deals and analyze deals, underwrite deals, do the due diligence on deals, raise all the money you need for them, syndicate, finance, property manage, you name it, soup to nuts. You'll leave knowing how to do all that stuff, and you'll leave juiced, because you will be juiced when you leave. Trust me, it's real value. I've never had a negative word other than the breaks are too short, because I do 15-minute breaks every couple hours, because I try to pack so much stuff in. I basically took a 3-day and condensed it to a 2-day, and trust me, the breaks are harder on me. So the one thing I want to mention, I got a couple other things if you'll let me finish the thoughts I had. One is your peer group, okay? That is so freaking critical. That's why my students are so successful. So you got to get in a peer group that supports you and validates you and encourages you. Most people default to people they went to school with or people they work with, and they may have their own fears or limiting beliefs, and they will hold you back because they don't want to feel like they're less than, or that you're successful, or they afraid of losing you. Okay, so you want, rising tide lifts all ships. When you play tennis, you want to play somebody better than you or worse than you, right? It's the same way with your peer group. And so it's just so critical that you hang around with people that expect more of you. And sometimes it's family. I'm going to tell you, love your family, but choose your peers. Super important. I will tell you, when I was losing everything in 2008, I was in Tony Robbins' Platinum Partnership, which was over 115 grand at the time. It's even more than that now. But I was around people that were killing it in that crash. Okay. They were killing it. And they're like, get up, you puss, 50 million, schmillion, go make something happen. That's who you want to be around when the proverbial stuff hits the fan. I just saw Pat Betrick David, I don't know if this is true or not, do a post. I mean, we could be having more of a meltdown than just multifamily. He said 6.1 million Americans are behind on their mortgage. I just saw this morning.
I saw that today too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how much truth there was to that, but
you never know with social media, but
yeah. Well, I mean, so knowing what you know, and you said that there's this meltdown that's happening. It's currently happening. What do you think about like outlook? You said there's a great opportunity as well, which always comes at the same time. But
crisis means opportunity.
Do you think outlook in terms of 26, 27, 28, there's this rebound? I mean, obviously, if you knew the answer, you'd be a billionaire.
No, I know the answer, and I'll tell you why I know the answer. Okay. Yes, there's going to be some great deals. They're coming because there's a lot of operators in trouble, and a lot of people have their pencils down. It's called, they're not buying right now because they're waiting to see what happens. There's going to be great deals. I'm certain of it. Okay. And here's why I know it's going to come back. And I don't know if you guys know this. In the last 4 years under the Biden administration, 80% of the currency was created, the U.S. currency. Up to 2020, only 20% was in circulation. They added 80% in the last 4 years. And we wonder why there's inflation, okay? But here's the thing. The beautiful thing about real estate is when you buy a property, your mortgage is locked. But real estate, in my world, the commercial real estate, the value is based on a multiple of the net income. It's called the NOI, net operating income. You guys know this. And so any increase to that net income is an exponential increase to the value. I'll give you an example of this real quick. I have a 296 unit asset in San Antonio, and we painted the parking spaces with numbers. And we told the tenants, hey, you want your own reserve spot right in front of your units. It's $25 a month. Okay. And we'll put a reserve sign on it. It's yours. We had 100 people take it. And at that time, that property was at a 4% capitalization rate, which is how you determine value. Now, let me tell you the math on that. Okay. And people always are like, you don't know how to do math. Well, here's how it works. You take that 25 times 100, and then you annualize it times 12. So it's 2,500, 30,000. You divide that 30,000 by a 4 cap, and that is a $750,000 increase in value for some freaking paint. We didn't pay for the paint. A tow company paid for it, so they had the towing contract. So that's why we love this business. So back to what's going to happen in 27, 28, rents are going to keep going up. It's going to happen. There's no getting around it. And so, as rents go up, your values go up. So, that hopefully that answers your question.
No, I think that was great. That was exactly what I was looking for in terms of the NOI. And that's why I think a lot of multifamily operators are so, you don't have to do comps. It's all based on, you don't have to
income.
See what the house down the street sells for. Exactly. So,
well, that's the thing. And that's the thing about residential real estate, like duplexes, thriplexes, fourplexes. You buy one of those and you may get a great deal, but you're relying on comparable sales for the value. Right. And so, you can't ramp the value like that. I'm sorry, I cut you off, brother. Forgive me.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm just very curious in the way you think about these things. And so having the NOI play a factor is like, you're able to forecast. And we've seen about this
force appreciation. You're able to, through your work, improving that income, decreasing expenses. You're basically forcing appreciation is what you're doing.
Yeah. So, do you have any personal, I know a lot of the focus for you, it seems to be like you've built this monster of a real estate portfolio. Do you have any personal goals to continue to buy, or is your main focus right now on building the community and the coaching and that aspect?
No. I love buying real estate. I was in San Antonio 2 weeks ago looking at assets. I'm very interested in senior housing. We've got a couple of deals we're looking at. I threatened to do it 12 years ago. I formed a team. I went and got my ALF license in Florida for 3 days and got the domain name affordableseniorhousing.com, which my dumbass let go. But anyway, I was going to do assist senior housing like 12 years ago, and I'm definitely interested in that. I'm interested also in larger self-storage, like self-contained 20 by 40 units or 20 by 50 units for like offsite business storage or RV storage, stuff like that. I'm very interested in that as well. And my students are doing all this stuff as well. But I'm going to be an opportunist because I've been waiting for multifamily. Haven't bought a deal in almost a year now. And so I've been waiting for opportunity, and it's upon us. It's coming, but I'm going to be more geographically specific. Right now, I've got assets in 7 states, and it's just not a good way to do it. A better way to do it is to be geographically specific. So I'm very interested in Nashville and San Antonio right now.
Rod, we took the question and you kind of molded it in a different way when I said enough is enough. And I think it's interesting. I want you talk about the growth mindset, but for somebody that's in the position that you are, do you have an inability to take your foot off the gas in terms of the way that you think? And like, I want to be doing all this stuff, obviously, or you wouldn't, but I'm very curious. Do you have a position that you feel like, hey, I can work differently, or I can change my lifestyle?
Sure.
I'm just,
sure.
What do you think about that as you get to the stage that you're at?
Oh no, you start looking through life through a lifestyle filter. I've had all the stupid crap, the Lamborghinis and the Rolls and and I've got a probably $1.5 million watch collection, just stupid shit that I've done. But right now I'm less about stuff and more about experiences. I've got, 3 or 4 trips planned in the next 6 months. I'm focused on that, but I can still be buying assets. Okay. I've got a team, a kick butt team put together, and that's what you work towards. You work towards having incredible people that you can leverage to. And even with my coaching business, I've got someone doing a lot of the coaching at night for my warriors. We just massively improved the program. And when you have good people, it's amazing what you can accomplish. That's back when I first, by the way, I've had lots of failures. I have, I call them seminars. I've built 29 businesses in my career. Okay. Several were tens of millions of dollars, most spectacular flaming seminars. Okay. And so we fail our way to success, and so don't fear failure. Again, fear regret. I got to meet the billionaire owner of Spanx, Sarah Blakely, for you guys. That's the stuff that goes under their clothes that holds all the stuff together. And she's a beautiful human being, by the way. But she told me that I was at a mastermind that we were together in, and she told me that her dad used to ask her and her brother, what have you failed at this week? And I thought, what an awesome freaking question to ask your kids so they don't fear failure.
Yeah.
I just have one more thing I don't want to miss out on because it's so freaking important, guys. And that's gratitude. I will tell you, I get asked all the time, how do you manifest this stuff? How do you make this stuff happen? I've got vision boards. Gratitude is the most important foundational emotion we have available to us. It makes us stronger when we face adversity, strengthens our immune system. lowers our blood pressure, makes our heart stronger, brings us closer to our spirituality, but it's how you bring everything you want into your life. Okay. Like I'll sit in the morning and I'll sit on my couch or my recliner and I'll just be grateful for the people that I love in my life, my students. Sorry, I'm just getting over a sinus thing, but I'll just do gratitude, but then I'll do gratitude for the things that I want as if I already have them. And sometimes I'll get emotional being grateful for things I don't even have yet. And I may have lost some of you analytical ones on that, but this is how I had 50 million to lose and how I got it back. So ignore it at your freaking peril. And the last piece is, when I lived in Denver, I'll just tell you a quick story because it's really going to add value. When I lived in Denver, I always knew I wanted to live on the beach, and there's no beach in Denver. And I would visualize the palm trees and the sand and the surf and like literally how many years later? 18. This was when I was 18. When I was like 20 years later, I built this incredible mansion on the beach. I mean, it's 10,000 square foot. I own the beach on one side. I had my boats on the backside. It's called a Gulf to Bay. I mean, this place is magnificent. Big spiral staircase up through the middle, wine cellar, elevator, aquarium around the staircase. Cost me almost $200,000. I mean, just gives you an idea of the house. Well, I worked for that for 20 freaking years. 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night and I'm looking up at this testament to my ego, which is really what it was. It was to prove to the freaking world I was good enough. Okay. That didn't do it. I mean, good God. Okay. My family's inside sleeping. I've got the Maserati and the Mercedes and the boats and the jet skis and all the crap. And I got depressed. And I don't mean a little depressed. I mean, I got really depressed. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I've just achieved success like times 1,000. And that's what I want to share. There were several things going on. Number one is you never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined up behind it. Like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You need a vision for the future. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. So that's number one. Number two is it's never about the goals. You need the goals, but happiness comes from progress and growth. And so again, go to rodslinks.com, do my goal setting session, or better yet, get your butt to my boot camp. By the way, the code is juice, but you got to go to rodsbootcamp.com. Sorry about that. But anyway, go there and watch my weekly planning process, because one of the things you do is celebrate any progress that you made, even if it was a little bit, because if you're making progress, you're going to have setbacks. You're going to have brick walls fall in front of you. But if you're making some progress, you'll be happy. But the third thing, the big thing, was I was totally focused on me. Rod, show the world I'm good enough. Show the world I matter. Well, that's the year I went and saw Tony Robbins for the first time in Fort Lauderdale. And I saw that he fed families. And when I came back, I called my brother and I said, bro, let's feed 5 families, because I was going to Denver and for Thanksgiving. And so he called his church and found 5 families that really needed help. And the third family changed my life. I mean, we bought toys for the kids and frozen turkeys and all that. And this woman was with 5 kids in a 1-bedroom shack. It was a piece of crap. She comes out, she sees all this stuff on the porch and she starts crying. The kids come out, 2 of the older ones start crying. I start crying, and I was hooked. And please know this is not ego. There's a real message in this. So don't cut off on this. In the last, 25, 26 years, we fed over 150,000 children in my area here for the holidays. We've done tens of thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies. We just did 1,800. We've done thousands and thousands of teddy bears to give to local police departments. I'm giving hundreds to the Sarasota Police Department Wednesday of this week, again, for the 5th time. And I don't say this to brag, but here's the thing. Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. Achievement is a science. You want to learn multifamily, get your ass to my boot camp. There's no excuses. It's there. We'll give you the blueprint and the map. You just got to do it. But fulfillment is an art, okay? You've got to figure out what juices you. For me, it's kids, also the elderly, which is why I want to do senior housing, but really kids. Maybe it's animals for you or the environment or whatever it is. Give back right now. Don't say to yourself, well, you had money, that's why you gave back. You want the money? Give back now, because the money will come back. That's how God works, okay? That's just how it works. So I just want to leave you with that message. A lot of people are like, they give back when they're successful, and that's not the right approach here. So it's really success versus fulfillment.
That really resonates with me. And I just think it's as you elevate in the game and you get older, it's just something, it'll hit you at some point. So the earlier you can let that hit you and resonate and take action is key. The last question I have for you is, and I know it's already happened to you before, but if you lost it all today, start, not in 2008, but everything's wiped out, you know, all your companies, all your real estate, and you had to go back to square one. How would you rebuild? What do your first, 30 days look like? And how would you attack it?
Well, that's not a fair question for me because I literally teach this stuff. So, I know exactly what to do. I would, if I didn't have the knowledge, I would find somebody that did. Okay. Back when I started buying houses, there was nobody teaching this stuff. Oh God, who was the guy way back in the day? Oh God, he sold the little courses that were terrible.
I don't know if our audience.
Carlton Sheets. Well, that was it. That was it back then. But I would find somebody, I show this picture of my boot camp. I didn't go to college, but I show this picture of my boot camp where I've got my arms out and I've got hundreds of lanyards around my arms, on my arms and on my neck from masterminds, boot camps, events that I've gone to. That is my training. And I've got a library downstairs that'll blow your mind. I have thousands of books. I read like crazy. And so, I would educate myself in whatever it is that I felt passionate about to go do as fast as I possibly could. I'd get as connected as I could with people that are doing this at meetup groups. I would network like a mofo. That's critical because my business particularly is a team sport. And I would add value in some fashion if I could to start generating goodwill, because when you add value, people consider you an expert. Now, if you're not an expert in something, I teach my warriors to do this. You could start a podcast like you guys have done, or you could do a meetup group or a Facebook group or and interview people that are experts. And by the very fact that you're interviewing them, you're perceived as an expert, right? Even if you're faking it till you make it, you act as if. And so, those are some of the things that I would do, but it starts with education and networking, and adding value so that if you need to raise money, you've added value and people will want to work with you. And it starts with competence, which will then equate to confidence, which will then equate to your ability to influence people. But make sure you're doing what you love, because then it's much, much easier.
Well, Rod, I can tell you that Ryan and I are doing what we love. And the only reason that we're able to have a conversation with somebody of the caliber of you is because we like to amplify other people's voices. And we like to share stories, and we like to honestly, candidly network with people that we aspire to be like. So if there's any advocacy for starting a podcast, it's the only reason why Corey and Ryan would be in the same room virtually with somebody like Rod. So I really appreciate your time, man. I really appreciate all the wisdom. It's clear that and evident that you're a firecracker that is ready to go for the next 20, 30 years. It seems like you're just getting started to me, man. So I appreciate it. If people want to learn more about you, they want to network, they want to go to your boot camp, they want to be a part of your world, what's the best way for people to
Well, Rod's links is the best way. My podcast link is there. Check it out. My podcast is, humbly, it's very good. Rod's links. It's got my boot camp site there as well. My goal setting workshop is there. You can do it. There's a free library of tons of fantastic books. Some are best in class and they're free. Okay. I've subscribed to the adage, you give until it hurts and it always comes back to you. And it has served me very, very well. My programs are a fraction of what anybody else charges, and I have the most success in the business. But it's been a real treat. You guys are real dynamos as well. I'm very impressed, and I'm happy to help you in any way I can, by the way.
Appreciate that, Rod. That means a lot.